The metallic screech of grinding gears echoed through the quiet suburban morning, causing Mrs. Henderson from two doors down to peek out her perfectly trimmed curtains. But Jonathan Reyes wasn't worried about neighborhood gossip. Not anymore. He stood in his garage, a blueprint-covered workbench before him, with a gleam of determination in his eyes that suggested he was about to do something extraordinary. It all started 6 months earlier, when the Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association had delivered their most infuriating decree yet: Jonathan's request for a driveway expansion. A simple, seemingly reasonable modification to accommodate his growing classic car collection was summarily rejected. Not just rejected, but demolished with a bureaucratic precision that made his blood boil. Your proposed expansion would deviate from the neighborhood's established aesthetic guidelines, the letter had proclaimed in that sterile, impersonal font that HOA communications seemed to favor. Section 4.2 of the community bylaws explicitly prohibits alterations to existing driveway configurations without express board approval. Jonathan remembered laughing, a sharp, sardonic sound that surprised even himself. He'd lived in this meticulously manicured neighborhood for 15 years, watched it transform from a promising suburban development to a fortress of petty regulations and micromanagement. His neighbors seemed to breathe conformity, accepting every dictate from the HOA board with a submissive nod. But Jonathan Reyes was different. An aerospace engineer by profession and an inventor by passion, he saw rules not as immutable walls, but as challenges waiting to be outsmarted. His collection wasn't just a hobby, it was a lifetime of passion. 3 vintage Mustangs, a pristine 1967 Shelby GT500, a rare 1970 Plymouth Hemi Cuda, and a meticulously restored 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air. Each car was a piece of automotive history, each requiring careful storage and maintenance. The current single-car garage and narrow driveway were becoming a logistical nightmare. When the HOA rejected his expansion plans, they didn't just deny a simple construction request. They challenged his entire way of thinking, the engineering mindset that saw every obstacle as a problem to be solved, not a barrier to be accepted. For weeks, Jonathan had been sketching, calculating, and designing. His engineering background wasn't just a profession, it was a way of life. Where others saw limitations, he saw possibilities. And now, surrounded by complex blueprints, computer-aided design renders, and a workbench littered with precision components, he was about to prove just how innovative a determined mind could be. The neighbors would talk. The HOA board would be furious. But Jonathan had something they could never understand: the ability to transform a bureaucratic no into an engineering marvel that would redefine what was possible in their perfectly ordered little world. Little did they know, beneath the manicured lawn and behind the unassuming garage door, a revolution was about to begin. One that would be built with steel, hydraulics, and an unbreakable spirit of innovation. The first prototype emerged from Jonathan's workshop like a ghost of engineering brilliance. What appeared to be an innocent landscaping project to his neighbors was actually the foundation of his most audacious plan yet: a subterranean car elevator that would make the HOA's architectural guidelines look like child's play. His wife, Maria, watched with a mixture of amusement and bewilderment as he meticulously planned every detail. A civil engineer herself, she understood the technical complexity of what he was attempting, but also knew her husband's legendary stubbornness. "You do realize," Maria said one evening, watching him calibrate a hydraulic system schematic, "that this is going to cost more than the driveway expansion would have?" Jonathan only smiled. "This isn't about the money anymore. This is about principle." The initial research and design phase consumed nearly 2 months of his evenings and weekends. He consulted with former colleagues from his aerospace days, carefully disguising the true nature of his project under the guise of a theoretical engineering challenge. Most thought he was working on some complex industrial lift mechanism, never suspecting the residential rebellion brewing in his suburban backyard. Local permits became his first hurdle. Jonathan knew every inch of the city's building codes, carefully navigating the bureaucratic maze with the same precision he once used to design satellite deployment mechanisms. He submitted plans that were technically accurate but deliberately misleading: an underground utility modification that would seemingly improve drainage and landscaping. The local permit office, drowning in paperwork and bureaucratic tedium, barely gave his plans a second glance. A few strategic conversations with the city inspector, who happened to be a classic car enthusiast, smoothed out the remaining rough edges. What his neighbors didn't understand was that Jonathan wasn't just building a car elevator. He was crafting a statement, a technological middle finger to a system that valued uniformity over individual expression. Each welded joint, each carefully calculated hydraulic pressure point was a deliberate act of engineering defiance. Maria would catch him sometimes late at night, muttering calculations and making minute adjustments to his blueprints. She recognized that look, the same intense focus he had when designing critical spacecraft components. This was more than a project. This was personal. The excavation began quietly, disguised as routine landscaping work. A local construction crew, paid handsomely and sworn to secrecy, arrived with equipment that suggested nothing more than a standard yard renovation. They didn't need to know about the marvel of engineering taking shape beneath the surface. Jonathan's youngest son, Alex, was the only one who seemed to fully grasp the audacity of the plan. An engineering student himself, he would sneak into the workshop asking detailed questions and offering suggestions that even impressed his father. "You're basically creating a James Bond-style car reveal," Alex had remarked one evening, his eyes gleaming with a mixture of admiration and mischief. Jonathan chuckled. "Sometimes, son, technology is the best way to fight bureaucratic stupidity." As winter turned to early spring, the underground structure took shape, a marvel of precision engineering that would remain invisible to the watchful eyes of the Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association. The rebellion was taking form, one precisely calculated measurement at a time. The first sign of trouble came on a crisp Tuesday morning when Harold Pemberton, the Oak Ridge Estates HOA president, noticed something unusual about Jonathan's yard. Harold was a retired accountant with nothing better to do than patrol the neighborhood in his golf cart, armed with a clipboard and an encyclopedic knowledge of community bylaws. The landscaping seemed different, subtly so, but different enough to trigger Harold's instincts. The perfectly manicured lawn had slight irregularities, almost imperceptible to the untrained eye, but glaringly obvious to someone who measured grass height with a ruler and considered lawn maintenance a competitive sport. Harold adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses and made his first notations. Something was happening, and he was determined to find out what. Meanwhile, Jonathan was 2 steps ahead. He had anticipated potential scrutiny and had designed his project with multiple layers of misdirection. The landscaping company he'd hired was renowned for their innovative smart yard designs, integrating drainage systems, hidden irrigation, and ecological management. To the casual observer and even to most professional inspectors, everything looked like a standard yard improvement project. But Harold Pemberton was no casual observer. He began making discreet inquiries: a phone call to the city permit office, a conversation with the landscaping company, careful observations of the property. Jonathan watched from his home office, a slight smile playing on his lips. "Let the game begin," he thought. Maria caught him grinning one afternoon and raised an eyebrow. "You're enjoying this far too much," she said, though her own smile suggested she wasn't entirely immune to the excitement. The HOA board meeting that month was particularly tense. Jonathan knew Harold would be gathering intelligence, preparing to strike. And strike he did, calling for a special review of Jonathan's recent property modifications. "There are irregularities," Harold proclaimed, his voice trembling with a mixture of bureaucratic excitement and barely contained rage. "Mr. Reyes has made modifications that require immediate investigation." What Harold didn't know was that Jonathan had meticulously planned for this moment. Every permit was in order. Every modification was technically within the guidelines. The underground structure, his true masterpiece, remained invisible, protected by layers of legal and engineering precision. Alex had helped his father prepare, reviewing every possible angle of attack. Together, they had created a defense so robust that it would make a military strategic planning team look amateurish. The HOA board meeting became a chess match of suburban bureaucracy. Harold presented his concerns, vague observations, subtle hints of potential violations. Jonathan countered with precise documentation, engineering reports, and a calm demeanor that slowly deflated Harold's accusations. "I've made no modifications beyond improving drainage and landscaping efficiency," Jonathan stated, his voice calm and matter-of-fact. "All work has been done with full city permits and within community guidelines." Harold was furious. He knew something was happening, but he couldn't prove anything. The gleam in Jonathan's eyes suggested there was more, much more, than met the surface. Little did Harold know, 60 feet beneath the manicured lawn, Jonathan's true masterpiece was taking shape. The car elevator was almost complete, a testament to engineering brilliance and bureaucratic defiance. The battle lines were drawn. The HOA thought they had won. Jonathan knew the war was just beginning. Summer arrived with a heat wave that matched the simmering tension in Oak Ridge Estates. Jonathan's project was entering its final stages, a delicate dance of engineering and secrecy that required precision timing and nerves of steel. The first full test of the car elevator happened on a sweltering Saturday afternoon when most neighbors were either hiding inside or tending to their pristine lawns. Alex had flown in from his engineering program specifically to witness the moment. Maria stood nearby, her arms crossed, a mixture of pride and apprehension etched across her face. "This is it," Jonathan muttered, more to himself than to his family. The hydraulic system hummed to life, a low vibration that might have been mistaken for a distant lawnmower. Beneath the carefully disguised landscaping, a masterpiece of artificial turfs, strategically placed rock formations, and subtle grading, a marvel of mechanical engineering, began to move. The 1967 Shelby GT500, Jonathan's most prized possession, started its descent. The elevator was a triumph of design, utilizing a combination of hydraulic lifts, precision-engineered guide rails, and a concealment system that would make a military bunker look amateur. Each component had been custom designed, each movement calculated to near microscopic precision. Alex watched the computer monitors calling out readings: hydraulic pressure, nominal; lateral stabilization, perfect; vertical descent, smooth. What made the system truly brilliant was its multiplicity of deceptions. To any external observer, it would appear to be nothing more than an elaborate landscaping feature. The rock formations could be moved. The artificial turf could be rolled back. But the true mechanism remained hidden, a secret waiting to be revealed. Unbeknownst to Jonathan, Harold Pemberton was making his own moves. The HOA president had hired a private investigator, a retired local police detective named Marcus Reeves, to dig deeper into Jonathan's recent property modifications. Reeves was thorough. He began with aerial photographs, comparing recent satellite images with historical ones. He examined permit records, interviewed local contractors, and slowly began to piece together a puzzle that didn't quite make sense. "Something's not right," Reeves told Harold during their clandestine meeting at a local coffee shop. "Your guy has done something, but I can't figure out what." The first hint of trouble came from an unexpected source. Jenny Thompson, a retired science teacher who lived across the street, had a habit of watching the neighborhood through her bay window. She noticed something odd about Jonathan's yards, slight movements, almost imperceptible, that didn't align with typical landscaping behavior. "It's like the ground breathes," she would later tell the investigator, a statement that would be dismissed as the rambling of a bored retiree. But Jenny was observant, more observant than anyone knew. As the elevator completed its first successful test, Jonathan allowed himself a moment of triumph. The system worked perfectly. His classic cars could now be stored underground, protected from the elements, hidden from prying eyes, and completely outside the HOA's ability to control or regulate. Maria walked up to him, a rare smile breaking through her usually reserved demeanor. "You actually did it," she said, more a statement of fact than a question. Jonathan's response was simple: "They left me no choice." What none of them realized was that the game was about to change. Harold Pemberton was closing in. The private investigator was collecting evidence, and Jenny Thompson was watching, always watching. The suburban battlefield was about to become a full-blown war of wills, engineering, and architectural rebellion. Not a literal explosion, though the metaphorical one was devastating enough. It was a Tuesday morning when Marcus Reeves, the private investigator, finally presented his findings to the Oak Ridge Estates HOA board. Harold Pemberton's face turned a shade of red that medical professionals would have found concerning. "We have evidence," Reeves announced, spreading out a series of photographs, thermal imaging reports, and carefully annotated property surveys of a significant underground modification that violates multiple community bylaws. The HOA conference room became a pressure cooker of suburban tension. Board members leaned forward, some with excitement, others with the barely concealed glee of those about to witness a public takedown. But Jonathan had been preparing for this moment his entire life. The legal response was immediate and surgical. Within hours of receiving the HOA's official complaint, Jonathan's lawyer, a brilliant property rights specialist named Elena Rodriguez, had filed a countersuit that was nothing short of legal origami. She exposed every minute inconsistency in the HOA's architectural guidelines, challenged the legitimacy of several of their most stringent rules, and created a defense so complex that it would make most federal litigation look like a child's game. Maria watched the preparations with a mix of admiration and concern. "You realize this is going to get ugly," she told Jonathan one evening as he reviewed the mountain of documentation. "They started it," he replied, a familiar engineering precision in his voice. The neighborhood began to take sides. Jenny Thompson, the observant retired science teacher, became an unexpected wild card. She had been quietly documenting her own observations, her scientific background giving her insights that went beyond mere neighborhood gossip. Alex flew in from his engineering program, ready to support his father. "I brought all the technical documentation," he announced, spreading out a series of engineering diagrams that looked more like classified military schematics than residential modification plans. Harold Pemberton's investigation had uncovered something, but not exactly what he thought. The underground structure was a marvel of engineering that technically violated no existing codes. It was a legal nightmare wrapped in a technological wonder. The first public hearing was scheduled, and the entire neighborhood knew something extraordinary was about to happen. Lawn chairs were metaphorically being positioned. Popcorn was being metaphorically prepared. What Harold didn't know was that Jonathan had been 3 moves ahead from the beginning. The car elevator was more than just a storage solution. It was a statement, a technological rebellion against mindless bureaucracy. "They denied me a simple driveway expansion," Jonathan told Maria the night before the hearing. "So I built something they could never comprehend." The thermal imaging reports were particularly damning and fascinating. They showed an underground structure that defied conventional understanding. It wasn't just a storage solution, it was an engineering marvel that challenged everything the HOA thought they knew about residential modifications. Marcus Reeves, the private investigator, found himself in over his head. What had started as a simple investigation had turned into something far more complex. The underground structure was a labyrinth of engineering brilliance, each component so precisely designed that it seemed to defy the very laws of physics. As the hearing approached, the tension in Oak Ridge Estates was palpable. Neighbors who had previously been content to mind their own business now found themselves choosing sides. Some saw Jonathan as a rebellious troublemaker. Others saw him as a hero standing up to bureaucratic overreach. But nobody, not Harold, not the HOA board, not even Marcus Reeves, truly understood what Jonathan had created beneath their feet. The final battle was about to begin.